Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Bench is a little dirty today, but we're working on a dirty power saw. So today's video, I have this 268 that we got from auction. Now, it fired, but it didn't really run. Today's video, let's see if we can get this saw running. I'll show you guys what I'm going to do to it. A lot of you posted a comment. You guys are on the same train of thought as me. What does this saw need? Because it won't run. I put a fuel line and a filter in it, and it won't run the way it is. Let's try it one more time and just see. Let's see, maybe it starts and runs today. Who knows? Maybe we pushed that fuel out of the carburetor and maybe it's going to run today. So let's fire this thing up, or attempt to. And even if it doesn't fire, let's go further into the fuel system. A lot of you guys are going to buy saws like this. I don't know how long this saw's been sitting. You guys know I got it at an auction. It looks like it's been sitting for a long time. And by the smell of it, you guys know the smell of rancid gas, I'm sure. This thing reeks. Like, it smells horrible. So anyhow, let's see if this thing starts. And if it doesn't, or even if it does, let's go further into the fuel system and dig deeper. I want to make sure this thing runs okay before we do any mods to it. Let's see. Will this thing start today? Well, friends, I did not expect that. Now, there's reasons why this saw is doing what it's doing. But now I can smell the bottom end of this is full of stinky gas. So let's give this thing a little bit of a carb tune, and then I'm going to take it outside and let it run a bit if it decides to continue running. Okay, one thing about these saws, friends, if you got a tuning screwdriver, make sure the shaft of it is long enough. Okay, because you end up hitting the recoil. Now, this one just fits in there. Low jet. Here's your jets on the saw. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, right there, low jet, high jet. The low jet is always the one closest to the cylinder, okay, on any saw I've ever seen, and this is your idle, okay? You don't want to mess with your idle too much right now. Okay, all I'm going to do, I'm going to start the saw up. I'm going to try and get this on here, okay? I'm going to turn the high jet in and lean this thing out, and you'll watch, it'll idle faster, and it won't be so boggy. Okay, let's fire this thing up. Okay, now, did you hear it race up and then slow down? Well, that's as lean as this thing will run. Now, here's the thing, friends. I know that we have carburetor issues because I literally turned this low jet off. Now, this thing won't run now. So, what do we do in that? For instance, okay, most saws will run at one turn. So, I'm going to turn this thing back out to one turn, okay, half and one. Now, normally, I would turn this in slowly like I was, and I'm going to try and do it slower to see if I can do it. Normally, you'll get to a point, it'll race, and then it'll want to die. Okay, so I'm going to fire this thing back up. Let's see if we can turn it in until it races, and then it wants to die. And then I'll turn it out until it races, and then it wants to die. And the point in between there, plus a hair on the rich side, okay, is your optimum setting. Let's try this. Now, this thing might not start now because I ran it out of fuel. Okay, now, friends, this thing doesn't want to start. We're going to just let it have a little more fuel. Okay, I'm going to give it like another 1/8 of a turn. And I'm also going to turn the idle up a hair just to see if we can get it going. Okay, friends, you hear that? It's too lean. That's why it's racing and it doesn't go down to idle and it's boggy. It's too lean. Now, it shouldn't be too lean because most saws will run at 1 1/4. Let's get this thing started again. I'm going to richen it up and then we'll see where the jet is actually at. So let's richen it up, meaning we turn it this way and open it. If I can get it going again, friends. Now, we know that this saw is lean because it should restart there. Let's give it another 1/4 turn. Okay. Will it go, friends? Now, again, this saw, let's see where the high jet's at. You get some of your fuel from the high jet. My high jet was at like 2 turns. So 1/2, 1 1/4. Let's put this at, let's see where we're at. 1/2. Okay. 1/2, 1 1/4. If this thing doesn't start now, friends, we're going to go to part 2. What I was planning to do. Okay, I'm just going to pull this thing over. This thing should start right now. Here, let's give it choke. Okay, friends. You see that? Just because the saw runs doesn't mean we don't got to work on it. Okay. Let's take the carburetor off this thing and have a look inside. This thing's got an issue. Now, it was running rich at the beginning and then went lean. What does that tell us? If we don't find anything wrong with this carb, we may have an air leak. Now, I could pressure and vac test this. Yes, I could. Most of you guys don't have that stuff at home. So let's go through the basics. There's no harm, no foul in rebuilding this carb. If we're going to make this a running saw, we're going to build the carb anyways. So whatever. If you put the carb back on it and it doesn't run, you go, okay, well, I know my carb's good, and you keep going. But I'm going to get some tools out. We'll pull this air box off and let's take the carb out of this saw. Okay, so let's start. If you got a 266, you'll skip this because those don't have an air box like this. Again, I hope you guys like this kind of content. I love this stuff. This is how I started with saws. I'd buy a saw that doesn't run and make it run. And again, you see that? This thing fired right up, which is kind of funny. I actually didn't expect that. But, you know, just because a saw starts doesn't mean I'm going to run it. The way this thing's running right now, it would probably blow up if I, you know, if I continue to run it the way it is. Grab that magnet. I can't remember who sent me these screwdrivers, but I use them all the time. Thank you. You guys are always doing me solids. Okay, well, let's crack this fuel cap. I don't think there's a ton of fuel in here, but crack that. That relieves pressure in there. Okay, so we got a Tillotson HS carburetor. If you work on old saws, that is the most common carburetor you're going to find. Okay, let's do this. Take this one off. This is common to all the saws on this chassis. 261s, 66s, 266s, 272s, all of them. Okay, they all have this kind of layout. Now you'll notice, look, you can't get this into there. You need a ball end or a modified Allen head to get these back screws out. I'm just going to grab one. Okay, now last but not least, take the choke out. There you go. Okay, there's your choke. Fuel line, I'm probably going to plug it with one of the screws because I know there's lots of fuel in this saw. There you go, fuel line. Carb linkage is right here. Okay, there's your carb linkage. Okay, pull the carb off. Now, this is the common gasket to all these. This one looks like it's actually in good shape, so be aware though, if you're going to pull the carb off one of these, you may want to make sure you have one of these. Okay, so all I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe that tray down. Let's get this carb apart and rebuild it. Here's our carb. with the intake elbow. This is an upgrade for these. These are different bolts. So if you're going to a 272 top end, you got to get these bolts. The intake elbow and everything works, but these screws are actually different on these. 268, 272 rather share these bolts. 266 and everything else, the screws are different. Okay, carburetor, if you're curious what your carb is, there it is, 234B, which is what I would typically find on these. That's an early large Tillotson, and by large I mean I think these are 17.5 Venturi, and that's what they put on them. Do you need this on a ported saw? Do you need the big carb? I would say no. Some would say yeah. One of my ported 266s has the big carb and one has the smaller carb. The big carb saw is way angrier, but I ported it way angrier, so I can't say that 100%. You know, if you port your saw, you're going to need a bigger carb. I've done it both ways, and I don't find the small carb saws to be anemic, so they seem to fuel okay. Okay, take off these 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and I'm just going to put these off to the side so I don't lose them. Okay, pry this top cover off. Now, don't just pull this off. This is clipped in to the needle and seat. Okay, you got to unclip it. Now, funny story here. This is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, I knew that this had to be working because this saw was fueling. Yes, I cut myself today. Normally, these are really crinkly. Now, this one's still dry, and you can hear it. Now, this looks pretty good in here. It's pretty clean. Somebody's had the Welsh plug out of this thing before, so. And again, you can take this out. Take your needle and seat out, just like that. I don't take this screw all the way out. I go like this. Once you get it most of the way out, you can usually maneuver the whole works out. Okay, needle, seat. There's a little spring here. I notice a lot of the carb kits do not come with the spring, or the spring is not the right one. Now you can see. There you guys go. Hold on, let's get you guys some light here. There's a ridge on this seat. Now, I notice these carbs tend to do that. If you get a really bad ridge on it, it will, some saws are hard to start when they first go. The needle gets stuck in that hole there. So I'll probably want to replace that needle. Okay, so this side, I blew it out. Don't see anything stuck down in there. Here, and let's open the other side. These are the easiest carbs to work on, and they're also probably the most common carb. Now, that screw was loose, and so was this one. So that could have been our problem right there. I noticed it seemed like we were leaking fuel out of the carb, and I suspect that I just found out why, because these 2 of these screws were loose. Okay, well, that's not bad. I've seen way worse than that. But again, a little dirty in there. So that's really hard and stretched. These flaps here open and shut, okay? So it's not that. Let's pull this off, and would you look here? Now, I suspected this, friends. You see how you can't see through that hole? Look. That's what happens when you run a saw without a fuel filter, or a proper fuel filter. So there you go. That's probably our issue. Okay, so let your eyes be your guide, and you guys can see. I don't see any light through there, so the main passage there that lets fuel into the carb is plugged. So that's why this thing is lean and then rich and goes all over the place. And that's why I suspect we were turning our jets out so far, okay? I was turning my jets really far and not getting enough fuel. Well, why? Because it's clogged. There. Look, you can actually see, there's my finger. You can actually see through the hole there. Okay, that was completely plugged. Now let's put this thing back together. And I'm just running and gunning today. And let's see how quickly we can do this. Okay, this is off the top of my head, RK23HS is the model of this. These are aftermarket kits. I'm not sure where I got them from, so please don't ask online. You can find kits like this all over the place. Wolf Creek has OEM kits, I believe. And yeah. So if you need a Tillotson kit, they're very available. Look at the difference here, friends. Okay. This is the factory spring, and this is the spring that comes with this kit. Your pop-off pressure, basically, when this opens, will be wrong if you put the wrong spring in, okay? There's the stock spring. There's the aftermarket spring, okay? I don't use these aftermarket springs. So if you need a spring, sometimes you're better off, in this case, to buy the OEM. Okay, I'm going to use the same metering lever here, but I'm going to use the new needle. And again, if you're using an aftermarket kit or even a factory kit, compare your parts and make sure they're the same. Okay? My new needle is in fact the same as the old one. Sometimes they're not the right length, and that'll make your saw flood or be lean, depending. Because this controls how much fuel goes into your saw. So if you don't have the right parts in there, you can get into trouble with fueling. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this on video. Put the spring in there. I don't find these difficult. They're not easy to do if you're filming. Any of you guys that make videos can probably confirm that for me. Okay, make sure that spring. Oh, somebody's sledding. By sledding, I mean a snowmobile. That's what we call them up here. Okay. Okay, tighten the screw down. There you guys go. Now, if you put that together right, you got your spring underneath this little detent here. It opens and closes. Now, these are supposed to be just flush. Okay, just flush with the bottom of this chamber here is how I've always set them. Hope you guys can see that. Okay, this one is flush. Okay, and that's the way I'm going to leave it. If you needed more fuel, you have a ported saw, you needed more fuel, bend this up. Maybe the depth, I'll get a little bit of dirt in there. Bend this up, maybe the depth or the thickness of this lever. If you're too rich, bend it down. You'll know if you're too rich because the saw will spit fuel out at idle. Okay. And again, if you're not sure the way the parts go, leave them in the order they were. This side, it is gasket, then diaphragm. The other side, it is diaphragm and then gasket. Okay, now one thing, okay, again, clip that into there. You guys see that? And then leave it. I have had 100 emails, maybe 200 over the last how many years. You guys have rebuilt your HS carb and you're too rich now. And the reason why is you didn't clip that tab in there. And I know this because I'll tell you guys that and you email me back and you're like, that was it. We've all done it. Make sure to clip that little tab in there. Now I'm going to do these up off video. Okay, there's one side. Okay, and here's the other side. There's your old parts. Just line up your new parts the same. And again, diaphragm, then gasket. And you see these little flaps cover those holes here and here. Those open and close. Those open and close with the suction and pressure of the bottom end of the saw. That's what your impulse is. That's why if you have a second hose hooked up to your carburetor, you have an impulse line, or it's built into the intake on this saw specifically. That's how they do it. Just depends on what kind of saw you have. Okay, and then line up the little tabs and put this all back together. I'll put the screws back on. Okay, there's our finished carburetor. Notice there's extra pieces in here. Don't take Welsh plugs out unless you really think your carb's plugged. I'm hoping I don't have to do that. Now, I'll put the carburetor back on the saw, just like the way we took it off, and let's see if this thing starts. Okay, I got the saw mostly back together. We're going to put our jets, you know, at a normal spot. Half, one. You're going to go 1 1/4 on the low. And let's see, half, 1 1/4 on the high. You guys think this thing's going to start? Okay, full choke. Ready? It should start now. If it doesn't, we know we need a carburetor or we have an air leak. Okay, it fired. Okay, it runs pretty good. It doesn't appear to need any tuning. It's 4-stroking. Now, I want you guys to listen. When I turn this thing on its side, it races up a little bit. I'm going to get some brake clean right now and show you guys a quick and easy way to check for leaks. Okay, all I'm going to do, I'm going to take this brake clean. I'm going to spray the cylinder base and try and get it on both the crank seals. There's seals around the oil pump. And just see if I can make this thing leak. I noticed when I turned it on its side, it races up a little bit. Okay, friends, well, tentatively, I'm going to say we don't have an air leak. Okay, well, I'm going to say we won with this saw too. It needed a little more work than the other two, which I suspected. These are great saws, but they have a lot more seals in them than a modern saw. They need more maintenance, and they're older. This thing's a 1989, and it's original. As far as I can tell, this thing's never been cracked open. So it starts, idles, seems to tune okay. At 4 strokes, it's nice and rich at wide open throttle. So I'm going to call this a win. And you can get carb kits for, you can get an OEM carb kit online for about $15-20. You can get aftermarket kits like I'm using here for $5. So, or even cheaper sometimes. So all in all, I'd say we scored big with this saw. I put a fuel line. That's about $10-12, a fuel filter, and a carb kit. So I think I paid $100 for this saw, and I'm into it for another $40 for the consumables and a little bit of time. Now, that being said, I wouldn't put this thing in the wood right now. I would play with it a little bit more and just make sure that it's not going to give me any trouble. But all in all, friends, what I see here, this saw could probably be run the way it is and put firewood in the back of your truck for quite a while. Piston and cylinder don't look terrible, and we now have a completely rebuilt carb system. So anyhow, hope that helps you guys out with your carb issues. And I did a little bit of tuning in there. Remember, low jet, start at about 1 to 1 1/4. If it doesn't want to start and it doesn't smell like it's too rich, you know, give it a little bit more low jet. It should start, and then turn that low jet in. It'll get rich, and then it'll get lean, meaning it'll race up, and then it'll want to die. Catch it before it dies and start backing it out until you hit the same point the other way. Okay? Lean, rich. And then find the spot in between, plus a little bit more, and that should be your low jet setting. High jet, 1 to 1 1/4. It should blubber at high RPM. At full throttle, it should 4-stroke or blubber. And then tune it in the cut. Put it in the wood. It should clean up in the cut, meaning no more 4-stroking. And when you pull it up and out, it should 4-stroke. That's how you tune a carb. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy, and I'll see you guys in a couple days with another project. Later.